Who's there? I think I want to wake up now. Wake up! Oh, what a horrible nightmare. Alright, homies. Got my fedora. Let's do this. What's going on, guys, and welcome back to the Reptastic, where movies and entertainment are our reputation. A Nightmare on Elm Street came out in 1984, was directed by Wes Craven, and stars Heather Langenkamp and Robert Englund. And the story follows a group of teenagers who are stalked by an evil monstrous spirit that has the power to kill them in their dreams. In this video, I'm going to talk about the theater experience and the movie itself. My theater has something called Comeback Classics. With everything going on with the virus and not as many movies coming out, my theater has decided to play all these classics like Nightmare Before Christmas, Hocus Pocus, Halloween, and Nightmare on Elm Street. So whenever I found out that they were playing Nightmare on Elm Street, I decided to jump ahead on it. And let me tell you, the theater experience was really great. It was a real treat. I wasn't born then. I was a late 80s bloomer, so it was a real treat seeing something like this in theaters. So like I said, I'm going to talk about the theater experience first and then move on to the movie. So let's get on with the positives of A Nightmare on Elm Street. The sound quality. As all movies are when they play in theaters, it sounded great. Now, you're not going to have as much bass booming that most movies are made with now. You know, keep in mind this is an 80s movie, early to mid 80s movie, so you can't be too nitpicky. But I will say this, the sound quality was still really, really good. You could tell that it was remixed in the 7.1 surround sound, 7.1 digital mix surround sound. And because of that, the dialogue in this, as many times as I watched this at home, on VHS, on DVD, on Blu-ray, it always sounded muddled to me. Muffed, I guess you could say. I never really caught all the dialogue, but when I watched this in theaters, a character would say certain things, and another character would say something else, and then I was like, oh, that's what he said. Oh, that's what she said. I never noticed that before. It was a whole new experience for me. It was kind of like watching it for the first time, even though I watched this like about 1,000 times. Of course, the theater experience is like anything else ever, which is why I don't believe it's ever going to die down. You know, as many times as I hear people say that it's dead because of this stupid virus, no, you're never going to convince me of that. I actually have to see it, and it crumbling in front of my eyes before that. I don't like jumping to the conclusions, and I don't like being around people that keeps on saying, and, you know, negativity is like the same thing as bringing me down. You know, no offense, but yeah, theater experience is here to stay unless I actually see otherwise. Enough about rambling. The theater experience for this movie was awesome. You know, like I said, the dialogue and all that was just amazing. And when Freddy would actually show up and pop up, you could hear him in the back, like in the back speakers. So that's how I knew it was like remixed in a better sound stage. Not to mention the picture. However inch the theater screens are, I'm not even going to assume how big they are. I'm not going to give out a number, but it's big enough. And it was awesome. You know, like every other theater experience I had, it was great. It was the perfect experience. It was like Freddy was actually in there with you. And am I talking about this being in 3D? No, but still, you know, watching something like this in my eyes, since I wasn't born then, you can see why I'm, you know, over exaggerating a little bit, you know, and I don't really care. That's how good it was, to me anyway. Alright, now we got that out of the way, let's move on to the movie itself. We're still in the positive ratings. The story, it really grabbed me. I like the whole concept that this spirit is able to invade your dreams and stalk you and kill you. So, in a way, the characters felt trapped. You need sleep. So, it was like one of those scenarios. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you go to sleep, this man kills you. If you don't go to sleep, you'll die in like several days. Because, again, the body needs sleep. So they were screwed either way. And I like that concept. It made it for a much more festive horror film. It wasn't like some mongoloid monster in the woods chasing you, or some alien invasion, or some zombie attack. It was just you sleeping comfortably in your bed, and then this spirit just comes and grabs you and kills you. And the characters was done pretty decently. Most notably Heather Langenkamp, who plays Nancy, the main girl. She's sort of this innocent type, yet tough. And I like the whole thing at the ending where she was setting up everything. It's kind of like a Home Alone situation whenever she faces Freddy. So in a way, if you think about it, this movie was actually the original concept for Home Alone. A much more gruesome version of it, but yeah, if you think about it, this movie brought up the concept before Home Alone did. So that was pretty interesting. When I was watching this, as many times as I watched this, I never quite caught on to that. But now I'm going to think about Home Alone whenever I watch this, especially the ending. And that's how quick she was. You knew she was going to be the final girl as soon as that happened. She was tough. She held her own. And she was a good performer. Robert Englund, who plays the main villain, Fred Krueger. Fred Krueger is what they called him in this one, and then in the later sequels changed it to Freddy. But he was really awesome. I think this man was born to play this part. This character has gone down to be one of the most iconic characters in the horror community, next to Jason, Michael, and Leatherface. Freddy Krueger has definitely been held up as its own, and he's a pretty amazing horror icon. And he's one of those that's kind of unique because his backstory is really gruesome. It's a really dark backstory. He's basically a child murderer, and his bunch of parents came to torch him and kill him. And that's how he became who he is. So he was never a good guy. He was pure evil, pure and simple. The original concept behind this character is that he was going to be a child molester, but at the time, it was a very sensitive subject, and I still think it is. That's never something to joke about. But they decided to change him into a child murderer instead. Because I think there's like a bunch of articles of like real life stuff like that happening. Child molesters running free and stuff. So I think for its time, I think it was a good idea to change him to a murderer instead of a molester. And you see my facial expressions because, yeah, I don't like that concept. I probably wouldn't have liked this movie as much, which is why I don't really like the remake as much, but, moving on. But Freddy Krueger is hands down one of the most iconic characters in the horror community. Very visceral, very dark, very spooky. Unlike the sequels in this, he was very serious. And Robert Englund played him really well. He basically became one of Hollywood's beloved slashers.
Please, God.
This is God.
The makeup effects team did a really good job on him. The way they made him look burnt and the prosthetics and everything and the costume design. The team did an excellent job. Looked very real, especially with his makeup and everything. And it's pretty much the stuff nightmares are made of. Yes, I know I quoted Freddy vs. Jason. The score was epic. Charles Bernstein created something unique. Like with anything else in this movie, he has his own score. Michael Myers has his own score. Phantasm, the Tall Man, had his own score. Freddy Krueger, when you're watching that Freddy Krueger movie, you know it because of the score. I mean, what you see, but if you listen to the score, it was pretty amazing. Especially when the movie starts and he's making his finger knives and he's, grinding them and getting them ready for his kill and then slipping his hand in it. That creepy theme in the back before he starts chasing the girl is just iconic. So much so that I kind of teared up a little bit. Yes, I'm half Italian, so I do get a little emotional and things like that. But that's a good thing because that means the movie is doing its dang job. And the direction was awesome. Wes Craven is by far one of my most favorite horror directors out there, which is why it really hit me hard when he died back in 2015. And it's going to be one of my regrets that I'll always have. If I ever did visit up there or broke out somehow, which I doubt it, but if I ever did, that'd be one regret that I would always have, is never having the chance to meet him. I think he was a true genius. And, like I said in my past reviews when I reviewed some of his other films, Scream was the first horror film I ever watched. And that's what got me into horror. So I always knew who Wes Craven was. I knew he was the director of Scream. And then, later on, I started these other horror franchises. And when I got to Nightmare on Elm Street, I was like, oh, Wes Craven did that one. Okay, must watch. So that's how I was. And ever since then, I've been trying to catch every single one of his movies. I mean, some of his movies are swing and a miss, yes, but still, he created something unique with Freddy. And the way I understand it is, when he created Freddy, the name Krueger was the name of a childhood bully, which he incorporated in this film as Krueger, as the villain, which makes sense. So it was a big win for him. But he used to get picked on, this guy named Krueger. I forget his first name, but his name was Krueger. So I thought that was pretty interesting. And his look with the fedora and the red and green sweater, there was a hobo that used to hang around his place, around the backyard of his place, of his apartment, that he saw outside, and it kind of creeped him out. That's what was inspiration for the character itself. And the concept of the whole dreaming and getting killed in your dreams was something that he read in the New York Times. I'm not going to quote exactly what he read, but it was pretty freaky. It was pretty spooky. It had something to do with people actually dying in their dreams. And it was kind of weird. Even though I wasn't born at that time, I never heard of anything like that happening. Y'all might want to research it yourselves. It was a pretty long story, but it was pretty interesting. It was pretty spooky too. But that's where that whole concept for this movie came from too. And most of these directors, when you're an artist, that's where you get inspiration from. And when Craven created this character, he did something really, really fantastic, and I got to give him props for that, which made the impact really satisfying. It left a definite mark in the hearts of many horror fans, including myself. Not just because I watched this in theaters. I've always fancied this movie all the years that I watched this at home, but it definitely created a really good impact for me. This movie was by far a really great achievement, and I would recommend it for anybody. Who doesn't know who Freddy Krueger is? Seriously, honestly. This is one that has and always will have a special place in the horror community. With plenty of thrills and chills, this is a must. It's Reptastic. So, A Nightmare on Elm Street, have you seen it yet? You must have. Did you like the overall tone in this film? Did you like the whole concept between the dreams and the dying in them? Do you think Freddy is king, or have you seen better? Leave me a comment down below and give me your thoughts. Thank you as always for watching this video. Like, subscribe, and comment if you hadn't already. And I'll see you on the next one. I do plan on doing the rest of the Hatchet films and the rest of these, even though it's the last day of October. And by the way, speaking of, happy Halloween and sweet dreams.